This week's parsha is Parshas Naso. So we're going to be learning the Sicha that is from the Chelek Chaf Gimel, volume 23 of Likutei Sichos. The first one in the volume. So, and it's the title here, they translated by Rabbi Mendel Bosovsky from Project Likutei Sichos. They call it "Don't Call It Desecration." As we do, we're going to just go around. Each one will read a chapter. And, we'll just... All right. Let's go through. Starting with... I'll start, and we'll just go around. Me, Michael, and, just keep going around. Okay. The offering of Ephraim. Regarding the sacrifices of the Nisiim, which, the princes...
Wait a minute.
Of the tribes.
The offering of the Ephraim?
Yeah, so regarding the offering of Ephraim. Regarding the sacrifices of the Nisiim.
Go ahead.
For the inauguration of the altar, specifically that of the Nasi of the tribe of Ephraim, whose sacrifice was offered on Shabbos. As the pasuk says, on the seventh day, the Nasi, the tribe of Ephraim, on that day was Shabbos. So, Midrash Rabbah on our Parsha says, the Nisiim did three things improperly, and yet Hashem accepted them. An individual sacrifice never overrides Shabbos. Yet here, an individual sacrifice, the sacrifice of the Nasi of Ephraim, overrode Shabbos. From here we can infer how precious the sacrifices of the Nisiim were for Hashem. However, further in Parsha 14, the Medrash says, if you will ask, how were they permitted to desecrate Shabbos? Is it not so that an individual sacrifice does not override Shabbos? Yet this one, the Ephraim, Nasi of Ephraim, offered his sacrifice on Shabbos. Hashem says they did not do this on their own accord. For I told Moshe. So it's not that they were so precious. They were listening to what Moshe told them. They were listening to their rabbi. So it's not. It's like, what is that a proof of anything? Sorry, this camera angle is bothering me. I knew it would. There we go. I don't know how those people on TikTok do it with their selfies. The people on social media who take videos of themselves all the time. It would take me hours to get the right shot. I'd be like, no, that's not right. I'd never be satisfied. That's why I don't like looking at mirrors. I'm always shocked when I see myself in pictures. I'm like, that's what I look like? Anyway, so what?
Wait till you get older.
Oh, it's only going to get... That's me?
Wait to get my age.
Grandpa, is that you? Oh my gosh, it's me!
Yeah, right. Right.
So, what are you talking about? Hashem finds it precious. Hashem told them. He told Moshe to tell them. On a simple level, according to the first Medrash, the sacrifice on Shabbos was originally improper, meaning the Nesiim did three things improperly. So originally it was improper, and it was only after the fact, due to how precious the sacrifices of the Nesiim were for Hashem, that Hashem accepted them. It's the only reason Hashem said, it's like, it's because I love you guys. Okay, I'll take it. But really, you shouldn't have done it this way. But in contrast, the second Medrash, offering the sacrifice of Shabbos, was desirable from the get-go, because that's what Hashem told Moshe to tell them to do. I told Moshe. However, upon closer examination, even according to the first Midrash, we cannot say the Nasi's offering was forbidden. For heaven forbid to say that a Nasi would do something against the law. Moreover, and of major importance, was that Moshe was present. He was there, he was overseeing, he was being mashkiach over the whole thing. The Kohanim were performing their service, the Levim were on their platform. Did everybody go against the law? This whole operation go? The Levim, they would, what would the Levim do? Why would we bring up the Levim? Because they would do a whole show, a whole musical concert. When they had a musical accompaniment when the sacrifices were offered. Right? Electric guitar was wailing away, whatever the instruments they had. Yeah. Some DJ was spinning records, there was a whole thing going on. Moshe saw it all happen. What are you talking about? They all went against the law? So we must say that even according to that Midrash, offering the sacrifice on Shabbos was from the outset according to Hashem's command. However, since it was only a temporary instruction, aside from this one unique instance, such an act was forbidden, it was deemed improper. Even though this was a one-off, Moshe Rabbeinu was there, he had told him to do it, but still improper to be giving such a korban on Shabbos. Accordingly, we must clarify. So what is the reasoning of these two midrashim? According to the first Medrash, the offering was improper, whereas according to the second, the offering did not desecrate the Shabbos. Furthermore, the offering was the fulfillment of Hashem's command, for I told Moshe. All right. Chapter 2. Mike, take it away.
Chapter 2. temporary exemption? The Talmud says that the Jewish people did not observe Yom Kippur during the inauguration of the first temple based on a kal v'chomer. Since when dedicating the Mishkan...
No, wait, just pause there. Everyone knows what a kal v'chomer is, just in case anyone is listening, or if I'm watching this video in the future and I forgot. Kal v'chomer, so it literally translates to kal means light, chomer means heavy. So sometimes you hear the term chumrah. Someone's taking a chumrah or machmir, it means they're being extra strict on themselves, being extra heavy, something is reasonable. So kal v'chomer means something light and heavy, meaning if by this, that in such a light scenario you're going to do such and such, then how much more so when it's a stricter scenario you of course would. So it's an idea in it's a Talmudic argument, strict ruling in a light area, then of course by a more stringent area you would of course have that strict ruling. So,
okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Since when dedicating the Mishkan, whose sanctity was not a permanent sanctity, and individuals overrode Shabbos, despite involving a transgression punishable by stoning, then regarding the dedication of the temple, whose sanctity was permanent, and offerings brought there were communal offerings, is it not even more so clear that the dedication of the temple overrides the prohibition of Yom Kippur? A violation is punishable by the less severe punishment of chorus. And chorus is
Excommunication. It literally means to be cut off.
To be die spiritually, right?
Yeah, which back when people were a little more spiritually sensitive, if their soul was cut off, then their body used to follow. But so there's a whole list in the Talmud.
Accordingly, it is understood that according to the Talmud, offering the sacrifice on Shabbos at the Mishkan's inauguration was not just a temporary exception, improper, unlike the first midrash mentioned above. For if this were the case, then it would be impossible to apply this through kal v'chomer to the sacrifices offered at the dedication of the temple. The reasoning for the dispute between the first midrash in the Talmud and the second midrash, whether the allowance to offer the sacrifice on Shabbos was only a temporary exemption or not, can be explained in a number of ways. Among them, A, the Talmud, etc., follows the opinion that a tribe is defined as a congregation. Therefore, since the sacrifice that the Nitzi brought was a tribal sacrifice, it was not a temporary exemption, for it was classified as a congregational sacrifice and was offered on Shabbos, as all communal sacrifices which override Shabbos. True, the Talmud calls it an individual service, or individual sacrifice, but this was only when compared with the Tamid sacrifice and the offerings brought before and after it. These were sacrifices of the entire Jewish nation of all tribes. In contrast, the Midrash agrees with the opinion that a tribe is not defined as a congregation. Accordingly, the Nisi's offering, that's the prince's offering, had the law of a regular personal sacrifice, which does not override Shabbos, in that it could be offered as a temporary exception. B, everyone agrees that a tribe is defined as a congregation. However, the Nasi's sacrifice was brought from each Nasi's personal funds, not from the funds of that tribe as a whole, contributed, as clearly stated in the Midrash, as cited by Rashi in his commentary in the Torah, that he brought it from his own resources and not from collective funds from its tribes. And the dispute between the first Midrash and the Talmud, etc., is according to the Midrash, since the Nasi did not collect funds from his tribe for the sacrifice, it remains within the category of personal sacrifices, which does not override Shabbos, and consequently we would say that the fact that it could be offered was a temporary exception. In contrast, according to the Talmud, etc., although he brought it from his own resources, the offering was for the tribe of Yehuda, etc. The verse stated his ancestry in terms of his tribe. As such, it was an offering for the entire tribe. Therefore, his sacrifice was a communal sacrifice which overrides Shabbos. It can be added that accordingly the precise wording of the Midrash becomes clear. The Midrash states that from the words of the verse, this is the offering of Naso from the son of Abinadab. We learned that he brought from his own resources and not from the collected funds from his tribe, and he brought it. And this concludes, this offering overrides Shabbos, but a personal offering does not. The exclusionary clause, but a personal offering does not, rather than, but other personal offerings do not, or the like, implies that the offering of the Nasi is not classified as a personal offering. On the other hand, the wording at the beginning of the exposition, this offering overrides Shabbos, and also the fact that we require scriptural grounds that it overrides Shabbos implies that the offering of the Nasi has a connection to a personal offering. Therefore, distinct scriptural grounds are needed regarding this type of offering. The inference made from the word this, that it overrides Shabbos. According to the above, this makes sense since the Nasi does not collect funds from the tribe for this offering. The offering was a personal one. Nevertheless, since a person offering the sacrifice was a Nasi of his tribe, his offering had the legal status of a communal offering.
All right. Chapter 3.
That was clear to everybody?
Yeah, well, I guess, any questions?
Pretty much I got it.
Nice. Okay, good.
All right.
You have a Nasi, even though you have a leader in a leadership position, even if sometimes, there's personal expenses, but it's all for the community because this person is a servant of the community. So it's still a communal thing. Even if he's paying it out of his own pocketbook, it's still something for the community because his whole job, his whole being is for the community. Everything he does is the community. When he goes to the bathroom, he's doing that for the community. When he has his coffee in the morning, it's for the community.
He's a representative.
Yes, everything he does is. So that's, I think, the second answer is really on that note. That's, yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, 3.
Point. Yeah, so now moving right into 3. So what's the reason?
Chapter 3. What is the reasoning? Excuse me. On this basis, according to the second midrash quoted above in section 1, which maintains that offering the sacrifice of the Nasi on Shabbos was proper from the outset, and the Talmud holds the same view. The Nasi offered his sacrifice on Shabbos since it was a communal offering, and there was no need for a temporary exception to allow it. However, it is difficult to interpret the words of the Midrash in this way. The wording of the Midrash, they did not do this on their own accord, for I told Moshe 1 Nasi per day, implies that it was a unique instruction regarding this offering, a temporary exception. And it is self-understood that it would be an extremely forced interpretation to say the clause, for I told Moshe 1 Nasi, does not refer to the Torah statement 1 Nasi, and in general there was no specific instruction then. But then it refers to the general instruction and law for all generations that a tribe is defined as a congregation, or that the offering of the Nasi has the law of a tribal offering. Accordingly, the question resurfaces. What is the reasoning behind the dispute between the two above midrashim?
So now chapter 4, overridden versus permitted. Whether you're allowed to do something or it's illegal, but you get special permission. I'll say a quick story that I just heard over Yom Tif about this. It's very cute. That just happened last week. My father-in-law just came back from leading a group on Birthright of Pitt students to Israel. And one of the rules they're very strict about, Birthright has the leaders sign a whole bunch of things that they're not going to imbibe in any alcohol. The students can, but the leaders cannot. They got to stay, sober and watchful. I think because they've had issues in the past. Maybe some leaders who got a little drunk. Maybe it's some of the wineries they toured or places they went and things got out of hand. So they're very strict. They have them sign all these things, like legally binding them. And so one of the trips they did was they went to a winery. It's really nice kosher winery. My father-in-law's there. He's like, okay, I can't have any though. And what was fascinating is the second in command, in charge of the entire birthright, the COO of birthright, stopped in. As he does, he sometimes will pop into different steps along the way of the trip of birthright, just to like see how things are going, say hello, meet some of the kids, the students, kind of maybe a photo op or whatever. But he was there at this winery, and the vintner, the owner of the winery, comes with a nice glass of wine to my father-in-law, like, here, you got to try this wine. And my father-in-law is like, I can't have any. They're kind of looking at the COO. I'm not allowed to. It's it's in the rules. I signed a thing. I'm not allowed to have any alcohol, not even the tiniest drop. And the COO came over to my father-in-law, kind of put his hand on his shoulder and said, have a good time. He gave him a special ruling, like, today you're allowed to. Like, go nuts. It's my father-in-law. I mean, okay, of course, I made a joke. My father-in-law then right away grabbed all the bottles and just down on them. No, it's my father-in-law. I'm sure he, kept his cool, but yeah, he was able to taste a few and enjoy. But yeah, still the rule is not to have. Okay, in that moment, he got a special dispensation. Go nuts. But that's the difference. Overridden and permitted. So we can posit the following explanation. According to both midrashim, the dedication offerings to inaugurate the altar, offerings that were not brought in future generations, was a one-time thing. They were only transient and constituted a temporary exception. These dedication offerings were just like the other aspects of the Nisim's offerings that were temporary and considered a temporary exception. And many of these sacrifices offered during the inauguration days had this status. It was only because of this temporary exception that offering the sacrifice of the Nasi on Shabbos was permitted. However, this allowance can be understood in two ways. The prohibition of Shabbos is overridden, so to speak. It's pushed aside. The prohibition to perform labor remains in its place, but offering the sacrifices for the dedication of the altar overrides it. Or the Shabbos prohibitions become permitted, meaning at the outset, this labor is not something that's permitted, it's not something that's prohibited, but something permissible on Shabbos. This is like the dispute regarding saving life on Shabbos, in the context of many other laws. Whether saving a life only overrides these laws or renders them completely permitted. Is it that I'm allowed to drive this ambulance on Shabbos to save this person's life? Or is it, no, it still goes against it's still breaking Shabbos, but it's worth it to save this person's life. Still, I should do such a thing. I should break Shabbos in order to save this person's life. What is happening? There's a big discussion about that. And this is the reasoning behind the difference between the two midrashim. According to the first midrash, the Nisim acted improperly. The allowance to offer the sacrifice was only because it overrode the sacrifice, pushed away the prohibition of Shabbos to the side. For even after it was overridden, the prohibition was not nullified, but only superseded, since the sacrifices of the Nisim were precious before Hashem. However, the second midrash maintains that the prohibitions of Shabbos were completely permitted, meaning it, offering the sacrifices for the inauguration of the altar on Shabbos, was defined as something permitted. Here, the labor-related prohibitions on Shabbos never applied to begin with. Therefore, the midrash emphasizes that not only can we not say that they desecrated Shabbos or that they acted improperly, but on the contrary, they were fulfilling a command, as it says, they did not do this on their own accord, for I, Hashem, told Moshe.
5. Personal or public. On this basis, we might also seemingly explain why in the above midrash, quoted in the end of section 2 on the verse, this is the offering of Naso, the midrash says, this offering overrides Shabbos, but a personal offering does not. First stating here, the law here, regarding the offering of the Nasi. This offering overrides, and subsequently the general law regarding a personal offering, but a personal offering does not. This follows the opposite order of the midrash mentioned in above section 1. In a personal offering never overrides Shabbos, yet here we have a personal offering did. We can posit that this difference in order depends on the two above approaches. First, according to the first midrash, Shabbos was simply overridden, as explained above. Therefore, the midrash prefaces that a personal offering never overrides Shabbos, which emphasizes that fundamentally and generally this is a forbidden act, improper, and only here it is overridden in this case. In contrast, according to the midrash on the verse, this is the offering of Naso. The offering a sacrifice on Shabbos became permitted. Therefore, it begins, this offering suspends Shabbos. The priority and emphasis is on the law and the unique allowance of the Nasi's offering. Therefore, this may be offered on Shabbos. And only then it relates to the personal offering does not override Shabbos. And according to what was explained above in section 2, that according to the midrash on the verse, this is the offering. The offering of the Nasi was like a tribal public offering. We can explain that this is a reason for the dispute between the two midrashim. According to the first midrash, that it offering the sacrifice was done improperly. Shabbos was only overridden. The Nasi's offering was considered a personal offering, as understood from the words, a personal offering never, yet here a personal offering. Therefore, the temporary exemption only allowed the offering to override Shabbos. In contrast, according to the Midrash, beginning with this offering overrides, that it was like a tribal sacrifice. It was permitted on Shabbos to offer the sacrifice. However, according to this, it would turn out that also in our context there are contrasting midrashim regarding the definition of permitted. According to the midrash, that this offering suspends Shabbos. Shabbos prohibitions were permitted because the Nasi's offering resembled a communal offering. However, according to the above-mentioned midrash quoted in section 1, if you will ask, how were they permitted to desecrate? It is not so that an individual sacrifice does not override. For I told Moshe, this maintains that the prohibition of Shabbos was permitted, as explained in section 4. It was implied that the Nasi's offering had the legal status of a personal offering, and it was only because I told Moshe that the one brought his offering on Shabbos.
Seemingly it shouldn't have been allowed because it was a personal offering. It was only because Hashem gave that special dispensation that they brought it on Shabbos, that Ephraim brought his offering on Shabbos. All right, chapter 6.
Yosef's reward. In order to understand this, we need to preface with an explanation of a fourth midrash, Parashah 14, on our Sedra regarding this. Whoever anticipated me, I can reward him. This verse refers to Yosef, who anticipated the mitzvah of Shabbos and safeguarded it before it was given. Hashem declares, Yosef, you safeguarded the Shabbos before the Torah was given. By your life I will reward your progeny. Although a private individual may not do so, he will offer sacrifices on Shabbos. I will take upon myself to accept his offering with goodwill. This is perplexing. How is it appropriate to state that the reward for safeguarding Shabbos is, although a private individual may not do so, he will offer sacrifices on Shabbos? Ordinarily, this act would be the opposite of safeguarding Shabbos. Needless to say that the above midrash is problematic if the offering of the Nasi only overrode Shabbos, because then the offering on Shabbos is still considered improper, resembling a smattering of Shabbos desecration. Only because of a temporary exception did the prohibition was in fact pushed aside for the offering. But even if the Shabbos prohibition actually became permitted, that only means that there was no desecration. This is not, however, an act of safeguarding Shabbos, that it should be a reward for keeping Shabbos. It is therefore clear that according to this midrash, the offering of the sacrifices of a Nasi on Shabbos brought an addition to Shabbos observance.
Beautiful. So now, chapter 7, Shabbos or the altar's inauguration. Now the explanation. The four statements of the above midrashim can be divided into two general categories. The expositions that the sacrifices were offered improperly, and that this offering overrides Shabbos, but a personal offering does not. Both are found in Parashah 13. Discuss the general subject of the Nisim's offerings. One novelty of these offerings, among others, was the fact that these offerings overrode Shabbos prohibitions. However, the other two midrashim, which were both found in the next parasha, parasha 14, for I told, and whoever anticipated me, I can reward him, discuss the verse on the seventh day, the Nasi of the tribe of Ephraim, and are specifically addressing the advantage of the offering that the Nasi of Ephraim brought on Shabbos. Who, again, Ephraim is Yosef's son. It's that progeny we were talking about. On this basis, we can say that the general difference between these two categories is as follows. The first two midrashim, discussing the sacrifices of the Nisim in general, point out that the temporary overriding of Shabbos was a law related to the Nisim sacrifices for the inauguration of the altar in general. Meaning, due to the general importance of the inauguration of the altar through the sacrifices of the Nisim, their offering overrode the prohibition of Shabbos. This is really important stuff that we, kick off the altar, the Mizbeach. So yeah, it'll supersede the prohibition, the otherwise regular prohibition of Shabbos. However, sure.
And that's because of the is that because of the importance of what they were doing?
Yeah, because it's so important that we gotta inaugurate the Mizbeach, the altar.
Right, and otherwise it wouldn't be correct.
Otherwise, no, but yeah, exactly. Otherwise, it's still forbidden to be doing such labor on Shabbos, to be doing such acts on Shabbos, to be making such offerings on Shabbos.
Basically, it was deraisa.
Yeah.
Moshe told him to do it.
Yeah. So they had a special dispensation we're talking about, but the rules still applied. So that's why it still had this, yes, it is inappropriate to do such acts, but this is something that was supposed to be done. It had to be done. This is very important, so such was done. But in the other two midrashim, when we're talking about the special offering of the Nasi of Ephraim specifically, and that it was offered on Shabbos, it's explained that this overriding of the Shabbos laws is not on account of in general, you had, these leaders of the community and they were breaking in, the Mizbeach. So it was not a law pertaining to the altar's inauguration, but rather it's a law in the laws of Shabbos. Meaning, on account of Shabbos, because of Shabbos, this Nasi, Ephraim, had to bring his offering then.
Permitted or a mitzvah. This point that this offering of the Nasi service on Shabbos is a law of Shabbos can be understood in two ways. A, according to the laws of Shabbos, this offering was permitted, meaning it was permitted not because of the importance of the Nasiim's offering or the inauguration of the altar. In other words, the Torah says that their offerings were so important that they overrode the prohibition of performing labor on Shabbos. Rather, it was a stipulation in the prohibition to perform labor on Shabbos. In relation to these offerings, the prohibition to perform labor on Shabbos never took effect. This is analogous to that was found in numerous sources regarding the principle that a positive mitzvah overrides a negative. The absence of any conflicting positive mitzvah is a precondition for observing the negative mitzvah, meaning the negative mitzvah was never in effect when it clashes with the positive mitzvah. B, offering the sacrifices on Shabbos is part of a Shabbos mitzvah. Just as a labor is forbidden due to the sanctity of Shabbos, so too the sanctity of Shabbos requires that we offer a musaf service. Likewise, Shabbos requires that the offering of the Nasi of Ephraim should be offered on Shabbos, the one Nasi per day on Shabbos, which I told Moshe specifically by doing so Shabbos was observed properly. This resembled the reasoning and opinion about saving lives on Shabbos. It does not mean just that saving a life overrides the prohibition of Shabbos, or even that the saving of life renders these prohibitions permitted. Rather, saving a life on Shabbos, when doing so entails performing an action that is normally forbidden, is part of safeguarding Shabbos. Accordingly, we can better appreciate what it says in the laws of Shabbos, namely, this act of saving a life augments the observance of Shabbos, since the scriptural service that saving lives overrides Shabbos is derived from the verse, the Jewish people should safeguard the Shabbos. In the words of the Or Chaim, why do I say to desecrate Shabbos for the sick? This is not called desecration. On the contrary, this is called safeguarding Shabbos.
That doctor answers his phone call when he goes to the hospital. He's keeping Shabbos by saving lives. Beautiful. All right, chapter 9. Take it away.
Chapter 9, an enhancement to Shabbos. In light of the above, we can explain the novelty of the last two midrashim in Parashah 14, of the first two in Parashah 13. As mentioned earlier, according to the Midrashim in Parashah 13, the offering of sacrifices by the Nasim was allowed based on the general laws that govern sacrifices. The difference between them is only whether it was through overriding or permitting, as explained in section 5. In contrast, the Midrashim in Parashah 14, which specifically discusses the offering of the seventh day, Shabbos, both maintain that this is a law governing Shabbos. Therefore, neither of the Midrashim emphasized these sacrifices were unique and that they resembled public offerings, and thus offering them would be classified as something permitted on Shabbos, as in the above Midrash, Parashah 13. This offering overrides Shabbos. On the contrary, they emphasized that the Nasi's offering was classified as a personal offering. Isn't it true that an individual sacrifice does not override Shabbos? Yet this one, the Nasi of Ephraim, offered his sacrifice on Shabbos. Hashem says, "For I told Moshe he should offer his sacrifice on Shabbos, although a personal sacrifice may not be offered." According to these Midrashim, the allowance to offer the sacrifice was not because these offerings possessed a unique element and force, and therefore they suspended Shabbos to the extent that it became permitted. Rather, it was because Shabbos says that this one should offer his sacrifices on Shabbos, even though they are personal offerings. But, it says bakery, but these two Midrashim differ in the two aforementioned approaches as to how this permitting the Nasi sacrifice to be offered on Shabbos is a Shabbos law. According to the Midrash, "For I told" is like a stipulation of Shabbos. That Shabbos says that the prohibitions of Shabbos never applied to this sacrifice. Therefore, the Midrash clarifies that if you ask how they were permitted to desecrate the Shabbos, Hashem says, "For I told Moshe," meaning this was never defined as a desecration of Shabbos, for it was according to Hashem's instruction. We find similar wording in the writings of the halakhic authorities. They explained the words of the Mechilta, that the two verses, "Those who desecrated shall be put to death," and on Shabbos offer 2 sheep, were uttered in the same breath, to inform us that at the time that this was permitted, this was forbidden, teaching us that offering these sacrifices was not a desecration on Shabbos. Keep going.
Yeah, you can give it to the rest of the chapter.
And according to the Midrash, that says this was considered a reward for Yosef observing Shabbos before it was given, it follows that this was not just a condition of Shabbos, that the inauguration offering of the Nasi of Ephraim was permitted on Shabbos. Rather, by offering his sacrifices, the Nasi of Ephraim observed the mitzvah of Shabbos in a positive sense. The offering augmented the sanctity of Shabbos. This is like what was discussed elsewhere, explaining the words of the above Mechilta on a deeper level. They were said in the same breath does not just mean that they do not contradict each other. Rather, they both express the same content, the sanctity of Shabbos. This is A, by offering a sheep, and B, by the prohibition to perform labor. Therefore, this was a fitting reward for Yosef's observance of Shabbos. Since he furthered the observance of Shabbos before it was given, his Shabbos observance was supplemented relative to the Shabbos observance of other Jews, namely, specifically your progeny, would augment the sanctity of Shabbos by offering a unique sacrifice on Shabbos.
So that concludes the main gist of the Sicha.
Yeah, but
We're going to continue to clarify a couple things. There's 2 more chapters that clarify further. But the main idea is this concept. You have this concept where, the things that are sometimes super exceptions to supersede, but still go against the rules and go against what should be. But then there's this where by doing this, it fulfills the Shabbos. It keeps the Shabbos. Like we said, like a doctor, like saving lives, pikuach nefesh. Or by Yosef, by keeping the Shabbos. This was about keeping the Shabbos. And again, we're not commenting on general sacrifices being brought on Shabbos, because that was done. Every Shabbos there's sacrifice. That's the whole Musaf. We daven an extra Shemona Esrei because there's an extra sacrifice brought on Shabbos. So we're not commenting on that. It's just about the fact that personal sacrifices are something that's not allowed. It's illegal. But here, so what was this personal sacrifice? This seemingly personal sacrifice. So you have these two components of whether, yes, it was a personal sacrifice, but it involved the community. Okay, so it was an important thing that each of these individuals brought it. So yeah, Shabbos didn't push it off. Or is it, no, you're keeping Shabbos by doing this mitzvah. Anyway, so we're gonna continue and further points. It says additional points for further clarification. Shabbos before it was given. Now we brought up. True, it was possible for the Nasi of Ephraim to offer their sacrifice on the Shabbos as a reward for Yosef's observance of Shabbos. So this sacrifice enhanced the sanctity of Shabbos, as discussed above. However, why was the reward specifically expressed through an act that is, of its own accord, the opposite of observing Shabbos? You went and kept Shabbos, so as a reward, I'm going to have him do a mitzvah that's going to break Shabbos. What? No, shouldn't it be something like extra special about keeping Shabbos? Why is it going against the rules of Shabbos? So the explanation is that since Yosef had observed the mitzvah of Shabbos before it was given, before it was an obligation to keep Shabbos, he kept Shabbos. This shows his Shabbos observance was from a higher plane than the plane from which it was given, from where the command came from. As the phrase "it was given" suggests, the thing given existed previously and was then given to the recipient. First I have the thing, then I give it to you. That means it exists before I give it to you. It is understood that on each plane where the mitzvah of Shabbos is given, its sanctity and observance aligns with that plane on which it is given. This resembles somewhat the difference found in halacha between Torah scholars and workers and businessmen. On Shabbos, workers and businessmen must occupy themselves more with Torah. By contrast, Torah scholars may indulge slightly more in the pleasure of eating and drinking. Now, this is also true of the general difference as to how the rest and observance of Shabbos is offered by Hashem. For on it, he rests from his work. As a rest from speaking and saying, with 10 sayings the world was created, right? So he rested from those sayings, from those utterances. While below in this world, rest is primarily accomplished through cessation of labor. Just stop doing. It is therefore understood that in the world above, which is higher than the world of speech, in the world where mundane matters are not spoken, referring to these 10 utterances, those mundane matters, with which God created the world, the universe. The sanctity of Shabbos and its delight is not rest from speech, but rest from the descent and tzimtzumim, the contractions, the downward spiraling evolutions of godly light of this world, and its harshness, which is similar to Gehenna, hell, which on Shabbos all powers of wrath and all adversaries flee from her and are removed. Even literally, a loftier delight is revealed then in Gan Eden. Even literally, all those that are going through the washing machine that is hell, they get a break on Shabbos. They get a break. They go through Gan Eden for Shabbos. Yard time. Let's go. But more. They go and get into the heavenly spheres of Gan Eden. So this is also the advantage of Yosef's Shabbos observance. Shmira. Shomer Shabbos. He was a Shomer. Observance before it was given. Shabbos shown for Yosef as Shabbos exists in the world that is higher than this world where it was given. His resting was expressed in a loftier way than the rest from labor that derives from the "for on it he rested," from the world of speech, which is the 10 utterances, the 10 sayings. And the delight of Shabbos on that level, before it was given, is a far loftier revelation of delight as mentioned above. Therefore, the reward for the resting and observance of the level of Shabbos before it was given was through something antithetical to the elevation and spirituality of Shabbos as it is on the earth where it was given, which is similar to the fact that a loftier pleasure is revealed at times specifically through something that is extremely low. As we see, for example, regarding a father and his son, a father derives greater pleasure specifically from the silly behavior of his infant child than from an intellectual feat by his grown son.
Chapter 11. Hashem has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. According to the above, we can understand the connection of all this to Yosef and Ephraim specifically. Yosef personified the avoda alluded to the verse, "May Hashem add for me yet another son," meaning he transformed something that is an other or estranged into a son. This avoda was embodied in particularly in his son Ephraim. As Yosef had explained, Ephraim was given this name to recall that Hashem has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Yosef avoda was focused on transforming the land of my affliction into a place where Hashem made me fruitful. This exemplified turning darkness into light and bitterness into sweetness. His experience in a land of affliction served as a catalyst for growth and spiritual elevation, leading to a profound transformation. And therefore, the offering of Shabbos was specifically associated with him. The offering of Shabbos, the offering of a sacrifice, which is on Shabbos, is seemingly analogous to an affliction because becomes the opposite. It may be fruitful, augmenting the observance and sanctity of Shabbos.
Nice. May all of our seeming afflictions return to become our greatest blessings. Our challenges become our greatest strengths. L'chaim. L'chaim.